very fortunate to do that, and never in a million years in my young life or in my childhood would I have ever seen that coming. So I stand here today very humble and thankful at my friend who suggested I come out to the track, and for my first instructor, who I've never forgotten. And my mom, who passed away many years ago, got me a t-shirt that I still have, and it says, "Still plays with cars." And so the passion that brought you all here today, most of you have been to the track at least once, I still feel. I do this for a living now, working with advanced drivers and racers, but every time I go out to the track, I always have a giant smile, and it's still a playground. And I hope you all always feel that way. So we've done the introductions, and if there's time at the end, I have kind of a short, funny story to tell about, since many of you are familiar with Manhattan traffic, especially in the October timeframe when the UN General Assembly is there, and what a cluster that is. I have a funny story about that if we have time for it, if you'll indulge me. What I do promise is that this is not going to be PowerPoint hell. As I mentioned this morning, I have these mainly as a reminder to myself and my old man brain about what I was asked to talk about and other things I wanted to talk about to this group. So I hope you all will interrupt me a lot with questions, things you want to talk about. If it's out of sequence, I have a notebook here and I'll make some notes. Many of my comments are going to be oriented towards solo and advanced drivers, because I think the majority of the people in this room are that way, but not all of you. And so if I use terminology that doesn't make sense, for those of you who are beginners, please don't be shy. We don't know what we don't know. Put your hand up. There's no shame in asking a question and asking to explain something that I may have said that doesn't ring a bell with you. Fair enough? Will you help me out there? Because I don't want to blast by and have the rest of the day be a waste of your time. So yeah, I still do a lot of coaching in the car. I'm one of the few at the top professional level who still rides in the right seat with selective clients. I've done a lot with NNJR 8 years ago, 2015 for this event, this winter seminar. I was fortunate to have been brought in and did the same thing. And I was telling the group earlier that landed in Newark. So I live in Austin, Texas. And I've lived there for 23 years, well before Circuit of the Americas was built. But I flew into Newark in the middle of a raging snowstorm, February of 2015. And ours was the last plane to land for quite a while. They shut the airport down. But what an interesting experience, because I did not know this at the time, but learned later that, does everyone here have a car with ABS or a vehicle with ABS? Okay. ABS systems were originally designed for airplanes, which I did not know. And I learned that lesson landing at Newark Airport on 3 or 4 inches of thick snow, because you could feel the ABS cycling in a 737, which is an odd experience. And I don't recommend it. But it was very educational to feel it work at the 80,000-pound vehicle level. Things that we take for granted are truly life-saving tools. And I'm glad to be here to talk about it. Have also participated a lot with some of the NNJR advanced events at Watkins Glen for a couple of years right before COVID. The region brought me in to kind of be a rent-a-coach. They brought me in, paid my fee, and then they rented me out in hour-long segments to whoever of the advanced group wanted to participate. Of the advanced and solo drivers here who are eligible for that event, who would be interested in doing that again this September? Are the people who would find value with that? Okay, a few, good. Okay, good. Well, we'll see if it works out. Again, hit me up with questions, things you want to talk about. Again, a lot of my comments are oriented towards the solo and advanced group. So for those people in this room who I guess are white and above, what got you into those groups? What defines solo or advanced in your mind? Not in terms of the people who run the club, but how do you see yourself and what got you there? Anyone? Bueller? Sir? Consistency. Okay, very good. Anything else? There's no right or wrong answers. I just want to hear how you all perceive your skills. You.
I'm not going to hurt myself or anybody else.
So safety. Okay? You put your hand up.
Basically, that was
Confidence in one's ability.
Confidence in one's ability. And thus the confidence was also transferred to the people who were evaluating you, right? They saw that and they had confidence in your skill and not being able to hurt yourself or someone else. Okay, good point. Anything else? All those are right answers. And for those of you who are brand new, when you first go out to the track, the biggest strains are physical. We're holding on for dear life. Most of us have 3-point belts in the car, right? We're using the steering wheel in the corner to hold on, and we're very tense because we've never done it before. So we often are physically exhausted, and we've all experienced that, the folks who've done this before. We're very tired. We get out at the end of the day, at the end of the weekend. But as we get more experience, the transition becomes more mental, and the stress becomes mental because we've kind of figured out how to position ourselves in the car, and we're not nearly as tense. And we have to think more about what's going on with what the car is doing, what other drivers are doing, remembering the track, where I'm supposed to brake, etc., versus just, oh my God, where am I, and what is my instructor yelling in my ear? And again, for those who, I thought I saw a few hands of people who have never been on track. Your first time out, you're going to have an instructor telling you what to do and telling you why. But eventually, you're going to be able to do it on your own, and your mind is going to take the exertion as you go faster and faster and have to process things. That slideshow coming into your eyes is going to go quicker and quicker. One of the goals, I think, for the folks who are in the solo and advanced groups is that there's nothing you're doing that is surprising the car or you. What do I mean by surprising the car? For instance, if we enter a corner, and for those who haven't done it before, this can be the same on the street. We enter a corner, we turn the wheel, and then we stab the brake. Well, what's going to happen? Something's going to happen dramatic. Most likely, the back end of the car will probably rotate around. That is surprising the car. When that happens, what happens? The car will surprise us back. And one of the goals on the track, from beginner to expert, is to be smooth, consistent, whoever said consistent, and no drama. By no drama, I mean there's no surprises, you know what's going to happen, the car isn't pitching and bobbing, etc. A great way to see examples of that is if you go on YouTube or Vimeo and you look at in-car videos for professional sports car racers, things that I did for many years. Anyone. Patrick Long, the late Sean Edwards, anyone at the top level, in-car video that shows kind of what the driver's doing with the view out the windshield. You'll see them making little incremental changes with the steering wheel because they're anticipating the car is moving around. It's kind of on the edge of traction. That makes sense? Wet or dry. But the view out the windshield is serene. The car is not doing this. It's not doing this. The view isn't. It's not like we're on an ocean liner. It's consistent because they're reducing the drama of their inputs. They're not surprising the car, and they're trying to keep the car balanced and under control. And as a result, they're remarkably faster than their peers. And that's something that will pay dividends whether you're a beginner as you move up the chain in your skill set. Another thing that I think will differentiate, and probably for those of you who are advanced drivers, differentiate you, is can you narrate the track? If an instructor or an evaluator got in your car to evaluate you for the next run group, can you tell them what you're doing in each corner and why? Again, for the beginners, this isn't going to make a lot of sense because it's just remembering which one is the left, which one is the right, what do I do going uphill, what do I do going downhill. And I get that. Everyone in this room and all the instructors this morning started at zero. We all started as beginners. So we all remember what it takes. And the instructors that you'll get and that you've had are giving back because they remember how helpful their first instructors or their second instructor or third instructor were. But over time, as you remember Lightning, and you remember Lime Rock, and you remember Watkins Glen, and you know the layout of corners, you'll be able to tell your evaluator or your instructor what you're doing. Okay, turn one, this is why I'm braking here, this is why I'm turning in here, this is why I have to get on the gas early because X, Y, Z. And you can do that while still executing on track. And that is a way of separating your conscious brain from the mechanics of driving, where I'm putting on the gas, where I'm putting on the brake, where I'm turning, into you do it automatically. And the rest of it is just, okay, how can I execute better? How can I put myself in more safety? How can I put my instructor in a higher level of safety? Their life is in your hands. Just like your life is in your hands for those of you who are solo. This can be a dangerous sport, but it doesn't have to be. I was telling the group earlier that a lot of people ask, because I still do get in the car when I coach with most clients, is, gee, are you scared of somebody being a jackass and doing something stupid? And the reality is that the thing I'm scared of the most in the car is a mechanical failure. A tire failing at some ungodly high speed going into the bus stop at Watkins Glen, or a control arm breaking, or a brake failure in a high braking zone. Because most of the people I work with, and the same with your instructors, they want to do the right thing. They want to be sponges. You want to be sponges, or else you wouldn't be here. They want to listen. They want to get better, and they're not out to either impress or scare the person who's riding with them. And so, yeah, I don't really fear the people. I fear the mechanics, because eventually something bad is going to happen. We all have to do that. That's why you have to tech your cars. That's why we have to inspect our cars. That's why we have to do regular maintenance, because this stuff beats the crap out of the cars. And if we take care of them, it will take care of us. It won't surprise us. One other thing to think about on that point is, when we're on track, do we have an out? What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is, as you're doing your warm-up lap, your orientation lap, if you're a first-timer, if you get in trouble, if the car spins, if it breaks down, if somebody spins in front of you, do you know where to go safely so you don't hit something? Thinking about that every time you go out, especially on the warm-up lap, when it's a little easier to take things in, will pay big dividends. I do that every time I get into either the right or left seat of a car. Even if I know the track like the back of my hand, like Watkins Glen or Coda or Sebring or Pickling. Because you just never know. And it always pays to remind, okay, if that happens there, there's an out, there's runoff, there's this, there's that. And a lot of people focus on what's right ahead. Just looking around gives you a lot more confidence. I encourage all of you to do it if you're not doing it now on your outline. Make sense so far?
Yep.
Questions on terminology or anything? Okay, good. All right. So one of the things I was asked to talk about today was how we measure our own progress. How do I self-coach? So for those of you who aren't soloed yet, once you become soloed, you're going to want to be able to use instructors when you want them, but you're also going to want to be able to drive by yourself, and hopefully your learning curve will still keep going up. Some of you may plateau, and that's fine. You just come out to drive laps, that's okay. Some of you may want to keep improving your skill set, and being able to evaluate your progress and measuring it in your own mind is really important. So I'm going to kind of go through some personal views of how we can do that. One that Bill mentioned, data. For those of you who aren't familiar, what data means is there are a lot of different systems out there that can be installed in a car, that will, for example, measure how much gas pedal you're using, how much brake, how smoothly or aggressively you're turning the wheel. It'll record all that lap by lap, sometimes in conjunction with video, and allows you to go back later and look graphically at what you were doing in the car and how the car was responding. There's no benefit to beginners for that, but as you start getting soloed, and especially spend a lot of time in your car by yourself, it's a great tool. Why? Because it never lies. For those of you who've been on track, what do? We tell ourselves, oh, I was flat on the gas, full throttle until the 200 marker, and then I got on the brakes. And then you look at the data, and you see yourself coming out of the gas pedal at the 500 marker, and you coasted in and lost 40 miles an hour. Is that wrong? No, it's not wrong, but if we're telling ourselves one thing and we're doing something else, we're not improving. I mean, that's an extreme example, but you get my point. So data for a more experienced driver is very helpful. It allows you to look at what you're doing, especially if somebody shows you, as they're going to do with the Peter Krause seminar, how to look at it and not get paralysis by analysis, because there's so much there. That's one way to do it. It's a pretty sophisticated way to do it, but it's a way to do it in absolute truth at the track between sessions. You connect your laptop, look at the graph, go, okay, there's my best lap. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. I'm going to work on turn 3 next time around. But there are other things we can do. There are other things that are much simpler and much less expensive that your instructor can do, or if you're solo, you can do yourself. A couple of them would be, for example, as you exit a particular corner, pick one. As you get to the outside edge, which for the beginners is called track out, and the wheels are straight and you're accelerating, look at your speedometer very briefly. Try to remember what the speed was. Next lap, same place, look at the speedometer again. Next lap, same place, look at the speedometer again. As long as it's safe to look down briefly and then back up, in other words, not somebody right in front of you, it's a great way to say, okay, I was a little quicker coming out of that corner this time, a little bit slower. A couple other things that don't involve measuring lap time is if you have somebody riding with you, have them look at your speedometer as you're entering a corner and look at the minimum speed you do in that corner. We call it Vmin, or velocity minimum, and read them out to you. It's really tough to do when you're driving to look down in the middle of a corner, so we don't want to do that. But it allows you to have a great representation of how much speed you're carrying through the corner. Why is that important? Because it's really easy to go fast in a straight line, but the speed over a segment or a lap, how you improve, is carrying more speed in the corners. It's also, as many of you know, the fun of the sport, going fast in the corners. The straightaways, okay, anybody can do that. But if you can carry 2 miles per hour more minimum speed in a particular corner, that's going to carry all the way to the next brake zone, and it's going to have a direct impact in however you measure your performance. Lap time, keeping up with your buddies, whatever, looking great on YouTube. You get my point, though. And so there are a number of things you can do that don't involve sophisticated systems. A third way that is relatively cheap and easy is if you have like a GoPro in your car that doesn't focus on you. So you're there, you're sipping your latte going down the back straightaway, but instead focuses, for instance, out the windshield. And at a particular exit to a corner, to use that example again, and I brought a prop, is the car, as we get to the outside edge, pointed straight and ready to take full throttle with the wheels straight, or am I still steering when I get to the outside edge? Which means we probably didn't execute the corner well, which means we're not being able to accelerate as quickly coming out of it. You can look at the video after each session and go, oh, okay, I'm consistently doing X, Y, Z coming out of turn whatever, and you can work on that next time. Or you can have someone else who's more experienced look at your video if they're not riding with you and analyze. The point is, there are a lot of ways of measuring your own progress that allow you to still keep them in the realm of safety and peace of mind, so they can go home with their beautiful car and it won't be damaged. Some people are who want to continue to get better, continue to get better, take that. It's like, we got to use more throttle here, a little less brake, more throttle. Some people, that's not their bag. This is not their thing. So I think it ends up being self-selecting. The challenge are the people who are constantly asking, when can I go to the next run group? Because that focus for anyone, for all of us, is probably not productive. And that means we're focused on the token, the medal, and not on improving our skills. Hang on one second, because this gentleman has his hand up. Yes, sir.
So I need to derail the order, so maybe...
It's okay. You want me to go back?
Will you go back to the self-coaching later or not?
Right here.
I guess, yeah, so I guess one of my questions is, knowing how expensive it is to get on track, right?
Yeah.
Did you have some kind of like a routine in terms of like off-track preparation? So, for example, was Bentley is advocating for, mentor and visualization preparation. So between the track events themselves, you know, did you have kind of like a number of exercises or practices that you were carrying out to get ready?
Sure, that's a great question. So, I mean, I'll give you the ones that work for me, your mileage may vary. In no particular order, some people use iRacing, which is an online application that has pretty much almost every track in North America digitally recorded. They do have racing leagues. You don't have to race. You can just go to learn tracks. It's great for visualization. People who participate in sports such as, and not limited to, motorcycling, bicycling, skiing, water skiing, flying planes, riding horses, sail and power boats. The vision that is required to succeed in that, I'm not talking about competitively, but just to not hit things and sink, looking far ahead is great training for this sport. Other things, obviously, it's important to have a minimum amount of fitness. That doesn't mean being an extreme athlete like the Formula One drivers who are this big, but they're super strong. But it means that we have to be able to stave off exhaustion in the car, particularly if we're out in the summer. And, this is a stressful sport at all levels. And whether we're wearing a full suit or we're dressed the way we are now, it's really easy to get tired and overwhelmed and get overheated. So some fitness, some cardio and aerobic regular exercise is important, particularly if it involves some sort of eye-hand coordination. A lot of people think this sport is all about quick twitch, muscle memory, and super fast reflexes. No, it's not. It's really not. I mean, yes, sometimes you have to be ready to respond if kind of a spin or something happens in front of you, but generally, it's all about vision and keeping your metabolism slow and staying calm and level in the car. And so those are some things that work. Watching YouTube videos on some various tracks. Keep that track fresh in your mind. If it's a track you know, just keep watching and say, oh yeah, that's right. That apex curving is there. I forgot about that one. Oh yeah, there's the bump there. Because especially here where you don't have a full year season, like we do in the South, you're kind of hindered by the winter weather. It's great to keep that in your mind and try to remember, okay, I've been to this track. Where was I looking in this corner? Where was my brake marker? Which one was it? And keep yourself refreshed that way. And then if you do have access to a simulator, it doesn't even have to be a fancy one, they're really good to, again, continue to keep the skills pretty tight. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Okay. You had your hand up, I think?
I mean, the reason we want to be smooth is because we don't want to upset the car. Right? So going from smooth to slow to smooth fast, isn't traction control one of the most significant elements of getting the speed increase?
You mean not spinning the wheels? Is that what you mean by traction
Yeah,
control?
well, I mean, a lot of the newer cars have traction control.
Right.
And they keep the car balanced. But without that, increasing the speed once you are smooth, traction control has a lot to do with that.
Let me answer that in a slightly different way because what you just said is actually a great segue into the next topic. So I'm going to answer it in a very specific way, but it's going to be a little long-winded, if you bear with me. Okay? And anyone else who has questions on this, please hold on. So the topic I put up here, so this sport, for beginners or anyone else, is really simple, which is what makes it so frustrating to try to aim for perfection, because it'll never happen. There's two concepts, what I call weight transfer and contact patch management. What I mean by that, so for instance, weight transfer. You come up to a stop sign, you hit the brakes, what happens? Your car, the weight moves to the nose, the car tips forward, right? That's weight transfer. It's where the mass of the car is moving based on our inputs. You floor the throttle, the car squats on its rear. You turn right, what happens? It loads up on the left side of the car. That's weight transfer. How we invoke weight transfer on the track in our cars has a direct impact on contact patch. That means how much of each tire is available for grip in the places where we need it. The corners, the brake zones, things like that. Going full throttle down the straightaway. At best, each contact patch is about that big, even with the cars with the big fat rear tires. At best. That's all you have. You have 4 of those in an ideal world. Usually on track, it's compromised because you're turning or braking or doing something else that is changing where the weight moves and thus alters the size in a negative way of the contact patch. However, if our behavior with our feet and our hands can reduce the drama of the weight transfer, how much weight we're moving in each direction when it does it, we're going to have more of those little contact patches available. So for instance, if I'm braking hard, all the braking is being done on the front tires, the weight is over the front tires, the rear tires are barely in touch with the road. Obviously, if there's a dog that runs in front of us, we have no choice. But on track, in an ideal world, the car will be more like this. We won't brake as intensely. The car will be a little more on all fours, and we'll have a lot more grip. Not only does that give us more peace of mind, but it's faster because the car is much more stable. So, how that's measured is what I call the car attitude in the transition. The transition is a corner, a brake zone, where we transfer from brakes to throttle. What's the car doing in the corner? So is the car heeled over like this in the corner, where the weight is what? On the right side 2 tires? Or is it not heeled over as much, where the left 2 tires still have some grip on the road? They may not be that fat, but maybe they're this fat. Well, I'll take that any day versus nothing on the inside tires. And so how we move the steering wheel, that's our stability control. It's up here. Yeah, it's great the systems are there to keep us from hitting crap and to allow lesser drivers in 700 horsepower cars to pretty much live through the day. But on the track, what we're trying to teach and what we're trying to learn are ways that we do that up here of how we invoke weight transfer. And what that requires to reduce drama are what I call gentle hands and feet. Instead of stabbing the pedals and all sorts of drama like this, or throwing the car into a corner Fast and Furious style, where we're reducing grip, it sounds great, tires are squealing, it drifts, definitely slow, definitely not safe. And it beats the crap out of our cars. Or are we a little gentler and a little slower with our hands, even at fast speeds, so the car only loads that much in a left-hand turn? That gives me the left side tires helping a little bit, the right side tires aren't quite as loaded, and the car isn't very unstable, because if you do anything else, you make an adjustment when the car's like this, nothing good's going to happen. You make an adjustment when the car's like that, you can adjust things. So in an ideal world, to your question, we are the ones who are our stability control. We're paying attention to where that weight is transferring by our own decision and our own actions, and we're just being a little less sudden with it. Now, you can rely on the systems, and they're there to help you, and I certainly don't advocate turning them off. But in an ideal world, we won't be invoking those systems on track very much. In the rain, it's a little different, but in the dry, we are our own stability and traction control by just not being so sudden with that and keeping the car's attitude better. One other way of measuring the car's attitude, for example, is if we're turning, well, to me this is a left turn, to you it's a right turn. If we're turning this direction and we get to the edge of the track after the turn, is the car pointed this way where we still have to keep adding steering to keep it on track? Or is the car pointed this way where we can straighten the wheel? This is much more stable, much safer, and much, much faster. So it's a triple win. And also, you'll feel it in your hands, like, I'm not doing as much work. I'm not fighting the car as much. So I hope I've addressed your question in sort of a roundabout way. But as we go faster, as our speeds increase, we're still going to be doing the same things. We may be braking sooner. We may start turning in a little bit sooner because things are coming at us faster. but we're not doing them any more dramatically. It's one of the hardest things to learn from a beginner to an advanced driver is dealing with the speed of the input into the film strip into our eyes and helping it slow down in our brains so we don't think we have to get everything done right now. We have plenty of time to go through our gears, come out of our brakes, settle the car, and roll into the corner. And I know for a lot of people here that maybe is a foreign concept, but it will come and you will get it and you will feel the difference. You will go, oh my goodness, the car feels so much better. It was so much easier. And guess what? It's going to be a lot quicker. Did I address it? Or did
You sure did.
okay. Were there? Yes, sir. I'll get to you 1 second. Okay. Yes,
I
sir.
have a two-part question.
Okay.
First was back to the sim. When you
Yep.
spoke about bailouts and understanding. I have the simulator, and I find it really a great tool for many things. Learning a track, vision, seeing things that maybe when you're on the track you're a little too nervous to
Yep.
stare at.
Yep.
The sim affords you that moment, knowing where the flag stations are. You really get all of that really easily in the sim. But back to your point is bailouts. When you're getting into trouble on a track, when you're in a simulator, you know exactly what speed and where you have safe haven. You can run off, you can stay with something and feel confident about it when you're on the track. If something goes wrong in front of you, it's not a panic moment, it's more or less, okay, right? Meaning you know exactly what to expect because you've done it 100 times. So not only learning the track, but learning how to stay out of bad trouble on the track is a great tool. And like I said, you don't have to spend a lot of money. You buy a steering wheel, a pedal, and a monitor, and you basically have a sim, right? The second was to go back to his point about car control and traction control. When I started driving, me and my friends, we all get out cars, work at the same shop. And as I started to progress, the fellow that works on our house says, Chris, you're doing much better. I could tell. I said, how can you tell? Because you're not wearing out your back brakes as much. So meaning you notice that when you first start driving on a track, a good indicator is, right? Meaning if you're going through back pads tremendously, and which doesn't make sense, right? Most of the stopping force on cars is the front brakes are 90%. If you're burning through rear pads, that's got to tell you something about your control. I mean, your car is being engaged on a point where you might even, like you said, no one could really. When I'm driving, my peripheral vision will pick up once in a while. I'll see a flash. I'm not staring at it, but my eye will see it. So you're like, oh, I screwed that corner, right? Or I did something wrong. New drivers won't know that. They'll just, oh, that was great. See how fast I went. And they have no idea that the smooth part is some of it's the car. And if you don't recognize that, you just fall into these concrete habits and you repeat the same problems. Like, for instance, he said smooth is fast. It's a concept. I think it's a balancing act, right? Meaning smooth with your hands, brake pedals, it's a dance, right? But there's times when as you go faster and you're going into corners faster, you're going to give up something. So traction is usually one of the points. And that's where the fast hands come in. But the result on the car is still smooth. You're like you said, you had made that point earlier in your presentation.
Yes.
If you look at accomplished drivers, their micro corrections are occurring. But when you look at the car, it's smooth. It's like, that goes back to, I feel, also what he had mentioned. Like, you can't, as you pick up speed, your hands have to follow the moment of the car. And sometimes it's just a little twist of the wheel, which makes a big difference keeping the car in control.
Well, and on the bright side, I mean, generally people don't go from beginner to advanced in a weekend, and so there's a gradual progression where that almost takes care of itself. To your second point, for those who may not know what he was talking about the rear brake pads wearing quicker than the fronts, many, many modern cars, meaning newer than, I don't know, 2010, 2008, let's say, that have some sort of stability or traction control or combined system in them, whatever Porsche calls the acronym now and the other brands, in order to keep us from harming ourselves and others, if the car senses that something dire is about to happen, what it will often do is cycle the rear brakes sometimes independently of each other very fast in order to adjust the rotation of the car if it doesn't think you're going to make a corner, all sorts of things. And oftentimes when those systems, when we are in them a lot, when they are saving our butts a lot, the rear brake pads, particularly on track, will wear very quickly. So that is a very good point. I was actually going to get to that in a later part of the presentation about the intrusion of the various driver aid systems. But that's what I was talking about, if that didn't make sense. To your first point, an even less expensive and less complicated simulator that allows you to find places of safety and anticipate where bad things could happen, problems, spins, other people's spins, is YouTube. Because you can stop it wherever you want. It's like, oh, what's that there? Oh, that's an opening in the track. If I'm broken down, I can pull out there. Oh, what is that? Wow, I didn't see that edge of that arm coat. What is that? Oh, there's a tire battery there. I never noticed that. And we can sort of see the places where, oh, okay, if I'm following my best friend and they mess up and spin, where am I going to go? Because again, you are the only ones who are in control of your own safety and your well-being on the track. No one else is going to save us. We're out there behind the wheel. So, yeah, very good points. Ma'am, you had a question.
Yes, on the topic of weight transfer and contact patch.
Sure, let me go back to that. Yep.
Would you say that for an indicator, sort of looking at your tire pressures at the end of the track event to see whether or not how balanced the car is or which corner you were leaning a little more towards, would you say that would be somewhat of a little bit of a helpful indicator for visual, just kind of guessing how your weight transfers of the car was handling?
That's a good question. I would say that for on-track use, that may not be as effective as when one would hope, only because there are a lot of things that can affect your tire pressures that go beyond that. For instance, does the track have more left turns than rights? Well, that's going to because of what? Friction in the tire creates heat. Heat increases tire pressure. And so if there's more left-hand turns than right-hand turns, well, the right side tires are by nature going to be higher in pressure. If most of the track we're driving with the sun on our left and the other part of the track is in shadow, the left side tires are going to pick up more solar energy. So I wish there were an easy way like that to self-coach in that regard. One of the ways of measuring ourselves without the quantitative amount of pressure in the tires is, okay, I'm in a brake zone and then I turn in the car. Does the car take the turn in, or do the front tires continue to slide even though I'm turning in the wheel? That's an indication that we may not be balancing the car properly, we may not be turning in the right way. Or when I get on the gas, does the back end kick out? That might suggest that either there's something on the track or we're hitting the gas pedal too hard and we're losing traction. I wish we could look at our pressures and measure it that way. Unfortunately, it's probably not that easy for those reasons. It's a great question, though.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So on the subject of air pressures,
Yeah.
could you talk about how to set them up? So if I show up first day of a 3-day weekend, haven't gone out yet, sitting there, the tires are at the sticker on the door. What do I do with the air pressures? If I go out with them at the stickers on the door, I come back with balloons of 50 psi. How do I start? And what do I do?
So where are you on the color scale for New Jersey NNJR events?
Yellow.
Okay, so it's a great question. So I'll give a more complete answer. I would say first-time drivers, beginners, green drivers, use the sticker on the door. Don't worry about stuff that is just going to complicate your life. There's enough to think about, all the terminology and all this and that and all the things the instructors say. Don't worry about tires. No matter what people in the paddock or your friends online say, just put them at the sticker and drive. You'll notice when they go away or they're not as grippy anymore. It'll be quickly apparent. But your instructor's not going to put you in harm's way. They're not going to put you in harm's way because they would be putting themselves in harm's way. Hang on to your question 1 second, please. As you start moving up the color ladder, what you can do to measure that is to kind of think backwards. For example, let's say you go out with the number on the sticker. You do session number 1. and after about 3/4 of the lap, the car feels really squishy and it's not gripping anymore. But you finish the session, you come in, you immediately measure your tire pressures. Okay, how much did they go up? Okay, so each tire has a sweet spot of what a good hot pressure is, but it's pretty easy to say, okay, the car went away about 3/4 of the way through the session. Maybe if I take 3 pounds out and try that, and then write it down. See how the car does the next session. If that wasn't enough, take another pound or 2 out, write that down, and make a note of where you end up. Because whatever the hot pressures are, you'll end up with a cold pressure, and that's where you start it the next day. But write it down. A lot of people just try to do it, they wing it, and they don't write it down, and they don't remember, well, where I have no clue. And so just write it down. I started at 33, tires heated up to 44, no grip. I dropped them 3 pounds. I come back in, they're 41, no grip. You keep dropping until the car lasts through the session. The caution I will suggest, however, is do it in small increments and make notes, because if you make too big of a change too quickly, it can be a real surprise to the car and the driver, and possibly to the electronic systems until the tires warm up. And it can also be a surprise to us, because the car may behave very differently, particularly the first couple of laps. Because the sidewalls are going to be softer, it's just not going to be the same. So take your time, take a little increment, make a note, write it down, and then you'll find something that you're comfortable with that doesn't have a dramatic effect on when you first go out. Hold the question. I've got one over here, but finish your question.
So you're talking about the contact patch.
Yes.
You know, so with the Porsches, you got a different air pressure in the back than in the front. I've had instructors tell me to set them all the same when you start, and say, kind of the ear point, to lower them a few, but they're still at different pressures.
Okay.
You know, and I've had some of them tell me there's that little triangle in the sidewall of the tire. I've had them tell me to lower the air pressures until the contact patch you can see touches the top of that arrow. Is there validity to any of that, or just go with what you're...
Well, sort of.
Or just feel to your point?
Well, no, I mean, it's definitely not my way or the highway. Let me see if I can answer your question. I know I still have 2 questions that I want you all to remember what they are. So some tires have a little triangle on the side that kind of measures the spot where the sidewall, the part that sticks up and down, meets the tread, the part with the grippy part. In an ideal world, we don't want to be using the sidewall when we're going through a corner, because that suggests a lot of bad things and it never ends well. So in theory, that is a good measure. I say in theory because in actuality, and you're going to hear this a lot from me, it all depends. For example, what that looks like at a track like Watkins Glen, which has a lot of fast, relatively easy on the car corners, is going to be vastly different than what that visual looks like at New Jersey Motorsports Park, particularly the Lightning track, or Lime Rock, which has a completely different impact. Or it's going to look very different than my home track, Circuit of the Americas, which has 5 corners that are more than 90 degrees, where you're putting a lot of load on the side of the tires just to get around these nasty little corners. So the tire pressure debate will go on well after I'm dead. And it's like talking about, it's like talking about religion or politics at various aspects across the tire. I would only encourage that for more advanced drivers. But it does reveal a lot. It reveals the load the car is putting on the tires. It reveals how well your alignment is working. It can reveal a bit about driving style. It's kind of tough to interpret. And you're absolutely correct, but it is a sophisticated tool that I guess is an acquired taste as people get more skilled with setup. But yeah, I mean, you're absolutely, it's a much better judge. That will predicate pressure, starting pressures, absolutely, every day. Someone else had their hand up. Back there.
Hey,
I know you.
I know you. Talking about the tire pressures and changing things, one of the things we ask our instructors to do is to walk around your car and talk to you about, like, tell me about your car, did you check your tire pressures, all that stuff. So when you change things, please tell your instructor, hey, you know what, I took pounds of air out of all my tires. And one they want to know was if all of a sudden the car starts handling differently, like, what happened between yesterday and today? Or you took the air out, and now we need a little more time maybe to get some heat back in the tires before you start, really going for it. We want to know that because it really is going to tell us a lot about what we're feeling when we're instructing you. So change it in small increments as Dave suggested, which is very, very important. Small, subtle increments, 2, 3 times. But tell your instructor, hey, I took air out of all the tires. And if you said, well, I took them all out and now my tires are starting at 28 pounds, we're probably going to ask you to put some air back if you're driving regular street tires. Because some bad things can happen on the other end.
I found they don't do that.
It's
There's always
a
a conversation on that.
Yeah, it's always good, just everybody in the room.
it's a complicated picture because the more you do this sport, if you stick with it, the more addictive it gets, but the more complicated it gets. And so when I work with people who are racing at the amateur or professional level, where cars not only so the factors of adjustment, not only your tire pressures, but you have all sorts of different aspects of the suspension that are adjustable. You have alignment, ride height, all sorts of things have an impact on how the car is going to perform, both when I'm driving it for setup and baseline laps and when the driver is driving it. And it's really easy to get into the weeds and make things really complicated. And so typically what we do is we change one thing at a time, measure the results. In this case, you're just talking about one parameter, tire pressures. You're not talking about sway bars and rebound and damper and blah, 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 blah. But if people try to boil the ocean and make giant changes or multiple changes and multiple things at once, you can't tell what aspect worked and what didn't. And when you come back and do it again, it's not repeatable because you're starting from ground zero. Yeah, the car feels better, but I don't know if the tire pressure made the difference, or this made the difference, or this made the difference. And so, to Tom's point, doing little increments, one thing at a time, making note of the results, and then if you need to make another change something else, but in sequence. Yeah, I saw a hand, you right there. Yeah.
Age of the tires.
Age of the tires. Who remembers the wonderful actor Paul Walker? Right, Paul Walker, who was starred in a number of movies, including The Fast and Furious, passed away, unfortunately, in a Carrera GT accident that they attributed to driver error and way too old tires. What do they mean by age of tires? So on each tire that you have on a streetcar tire, there's a date stamp. Most people don't know where to look for it, but you look for a 4-digit number, usually encircled by an oval. The 4 digits are translated as follows. First 2 digits are the month, second 2 digits are the year. So for instance, if it's 1022, that means that tire was made in October of last year. Or the week. You're right, it's the week. So the 10th week of 2022, you're right, my mistake. If you see 1008, you probably don't want to take that tire on track. I mean, the rule of thumb, and I may get pushed back, I don't want to contradict your rules, is 6-year-old tires or less. I mean, for heavy track use, I wouldn't even do that. This is my opinion. But anything older than 6 years, you are putting yourself in direct lethal harm. And whoever's in the car with you, and your car, and thus your family members who won't get to see you come home, so don't do it. So yes, a very good point on the age of tires. Again, lots of things to think about when you get into the sport. Very complicated. Was there another hand up that I missed? Okay, good. Let's move on. Great questions. Okay, braking. I call it the holy grail because at all levels of driving on the track, improving our braking technique provides great dividends. It not only improves safety, it improves stability, but it improves our performance. However we measure our performance, I'm going to explain why. It's the low-hanging fruit. Here's an example. I'm going to go back to my wonderful Lamborghini prop. Most of our cars, most modern cars, have rear tires that are wider than the fronts. So this especially applies to those cars, but even if they're the same size, what do? We brake hard, whether we're on the street or the track, and as I talked about earlier, what the nose drops, the rear lifts, and the front contact patches, which oftentimes are the skinnier ones, do the majority of the slowing work. The rear contact patches don't do a whole lot, they're just kind of along for the ride. And if we do something with the wheel, like avoiding a squirrel that runs out, or a kid, or a bike, because the rear end is sort of hiked up in the air, we run the real risk of creating a spin. But what we fail to remember, particularly on track, is that these rear tires also can help our slowing down. And so, driving on the track is a bunch of straightaways interspersed with corners, which are preceded by braking zones. We have to use the brakes to get the car to a speed in which we can safely and effectively enter the corner without drama. And so if we think about the rear tires in addition to the fronts, and we use just a little less brake pressure, we don't hit it with 90% of our strength. Maybe we go in with 70% of our strength. What's going to happen? It's not going to be this dramatic, it's going to be that dramatic. And as a result, instead of those rear tires kind of hanging on for dear life and doing nothing, you're going to have a little bit of their contact patches helping you. Well, what does that mean? That means the car is going to slow better. It's going to slow down more efficiently because we've almost doubled our grip. Well, as such, we're going to reduce our danger, and we also don't need as many feet to get from speed A to whatever our entry speed is for the corner we're entering. And so not only do our brake zones shrink, but the chassis stability increases. So instead of doing this and then coming off the brakes and having it unload and do all this weird stuff, it's almost ready to go on all fours, which is where we want the car to be so we can start turning into whatever corner we're in on track. The challenge with this concept, and believe me, it works in every car and is dramatic, but the challenge is what our eyes and heart tell us contradict what I'm telling you. Our eyes and heart, we're coming, has anyone here been to Watkins Glen? Okay, so you're coming down the main straightaway into turn one, which is a downhill brake zone and a downhill corner to the right. We're coming in there at pick some triple digit number, and our eyes tell us, oh my God, if I don't park this car, I'm going to end up way out there in the weeds, in the wall, or hundreds of yards out off the runoff. That's what our eyes tell us. And that's what our butt tells us, because we're going so fast, and what we've been trained to on the street is, okay, you're getting off the highway and you're coming to a stop sign, and you really got to slow the car. And so what do? We stand on the brake pedal. And so we're already going downhill, so the car is already a little loaded on its nose, and what happens? And the car starts moving around, and we're going, oh crap. And then we tense up, and then bad things happen. But if we can just make that little bit of leap of faith to take 10% out of the intensity of what our foot is doing on the brake pedal, whether you're using the left foot or the right foot, it makes a world of difference. So if you're driving alone, if you're solo, do this at lower speeds. Find a lap, let's use turn one at Watkins Glen, where nobody's behind you, or they're way, way back. And just brake, don't come in as fast, brake a little sooner, slow down more, and then come off the pedal, but don't hit it as hard. Brake for a longer distance. See how it feels, and then move that brake point up, move that brake point up. I think what you'll find is when you're adding grip, when you're using the rear tires, it's going to give you much more peace of mind, but build up to it gradually. But it is truly a mental leap of faith. But there is so much to be gained by doing that. So much to be gained, however you're measuring your performance. I can't overestimate how much there is to be gained. That's why I call it the Holy Grail, because it is the low-hanging fruit for everyone in this room, including people at this table, myself, and everyone who is here this morning. We all can be better on the brakes. And generally, when we execute this, we are able to carry a couple more miles per hour through that corner, minimum speed. Well, why would I care about that? Well, if I can carry 2 miles an hour more in turn one at Watkins Glen, without drama, without loss of control, without butt-clenching moment, and I turn at the same place and I get on the gas at the same place as I did before, at 2 miles an hour, I'm going to at least carry that all the way to the next brake zone, which is half a mile down the track in the bus stop, and maybe more. It makes a huge difference. And so you add that up over 10 or 12, 14 corners, whatever track you're at, and all of a sudden you're going a lot quicker and you don't feel it because the car's doing less work. We're letting the car be more balanced, we're smoother with our inputs, we're less dramatic, and as a result the braking zones shrink and the stability of our car, and thus our peace of mind skyrockets. Again, at any level. You know, if your beginners, your instructors are going to gradually build you up to this. They're not going to throw you in a place where you're coming into a corner at 170 miles an hour and say, hey, you know how to do this. They're not going to put you in harm's way. But even for advanced drivers, think about that. Think about where the weight is moving when you're on the brakes. Really pay attention to it, particularly if there's nobody behind you. And try to do it a little less of that forward transfer. We still have to slow the car. Physics are still physics. It's still going to, the nose is still going to load. But boy, that car is going to turn in a lot better when the attitude is like this rather than like that. And we can come off the brakes and you're going to feel it immediately. That's why I call it the Holy Grail. Because in whatever level, that's the place where your safety, your stability, your peace of mind, and your speed is able to be increased without doing a whole lot of work. In fact, doing less work. Questions on that?
I have a question.
Yes. Yes, sorry.
In a braking zone,
Yeah.
when you know you're getting into, maybe over braking it, or maybe you pin the brakes too late, what adjustments do you recommend at that time?
You mean at that moment?
Yeah.
You probably will, if you don't think you're going to make the corner, then just slow down more than you normally would. Let's say, that's a good question. So, let's say the corner has to be taken at 50 miles an hour to be relatively safe at the level you're driving at. And let's say you come in there and you kind of miss your braking point, and all of a sudden the car is on its nose and you're standing on ABS and you just don't think it's going to make it. Well, you have two choices. Either you can stay on the brakes longer and miss the apex and still slow the car in a straight line, right? And then you're just going to have to give away that corner and turn in and go back and do the next corner better. Or you may have to go straight off and not even turn in. I mean, what the decision matrix on that is, there's a billion parameters and I can't make it for you. But you kind of have two choices. Either continue to slow down more so the car will make the turn, even if it's not where you wanted to place it, or just go safely straight off. Control the car, wait for the corner worker to point you, and then resume your driving and come into the pits. That kind of self-analysis, I mean, these things happen. Everyone that I know has made mistakes in the brake zone. What I would suggest to reduce the opportunity of that happening is if you're going to start changing your braking approach, I'd like you to think about two things, because that's actually a great question. I'd like you to think about, number one, if you're going to make a change, make the change at the same brake point you've always braked. Don't try to be fast and furious and I'm going to brake 100 feet later. And I'll explain why in a minute, why that never works. And why it's detrimental to what we're doing here in this room. So make the change with the intensity you're braking, not the braking point. If I'm standing on it, don't stand on it quite as much. And then keep gradually decreasing it. Eventually you're going to realize at a certain point the car is not very stable and you're going too fast. But keep the same braking point. If that works, then maybe move the braking point a couple feet forward and then kind of hold that and just practice that for a while and really get it right. The other thing I was going to suggest, I just forgot.
It was really important.
It was really relevant. Boy, this happens. Old age, bitch. Hang on, it'll come back to me. Yeah, that wasn't it. Hang on.
Pick your turn where you're going to practice.
Oh, I know what I was going to be. Well, yes. Make sure nobody's behind you. And, just pick place where you can do it. I wouldn't do it on the end of the fastest straightaway on whatever track you're on to start out.
One is great because it'll run off a set.
There's,
That's why you pick it.
most tracks have decent runoff, but I would start practicing this if you're going to do it, and you don't have to. I'm not telling you to do anything, but if you decide to work on your braking, pick a slower corner. Try to execute. If that works well, pick a quicker corner. The other thing I was going to mention, two things. Actually, now I remember them, believe it or not. The brain is slow, but it still works. Establish a braking cadence. and maybe your instructor will do this with you because we discussed it this morning. What I mean by that is this. Oftentimes, what people do, just by matter of personal habit, is they'll and then come off the brake pedal, right? And, okay, but the challenge with that is that coming off the brake pedal, what happens? We go from this attitude, I'm exaggerating, but still, to all of a sudden, what happens? The nose pops up, right? And we're trying to turn in, and all of a sudden, those front contact patches go from this to that. And what happens? The front end slides, and we have a not so great experience. So work on a braking cadence, and what I mean by that is if this is your brake pedal, this is your foot on the pedal, let's talk about a 4-point cadence. Keep it really simple. So this is your initial brake application, at whatever intensity you're doing it. 1, and then it's 2, 3, and just as you start to turn in, you get to 4 and you're off the brakes. So you're doing a little of what we call trail braking, which is braking and turning to help the car steer, but we're spending most of our braking cycle allowing that settling on all fours so that the car has its maximum available grip at the moment we need to turn the car in. Because that's going to give you the highest chance of executing well in that corner. And so those, I think, are ways of keeping the safety level high and not having an experience like that, which you will anyway, but let's not do that too early in our learning cycle. And also getting the car's attitude this way and the level of drama reduced. Oftentimes, if I'm in the right seat and somebody's having a hard time executing, I'll put my hand on their shoulder. 1, 2, and then I'm barely on there, and at 4, my hand is off their shoulder. Or I'll drive them around and let them feel it for themselves, what it feels like. But that kind of cadence in every brake zone, regardless of the intensity, just buys us stability. It buys us safety. It gives the car what it wants. And as corny as it sounds, if we give the car what it wants, it'll deliver for us in spades. The third thing I was going to mention on that point was just a very short personal experience when I was, I guess, the equivalent of your blue group, long time ago, back when the earth cooled and we walked around like apes. So I was at, as I said, I live in Austin, Texas. Before Circuit America was built, I had my old BMW, and I was at another track that no longer exists. And it was an open track day, so I went out there just for some fun. And there was a group of Spec Miatas out there at the time. This was the beginning of the Spec Miata era. So it tells you how long ago that was. And they were doing a lead and follow. There were about 6 or 7 of them, and they were around the track, and they were all following the same driver. And so I thought I'd tuck in behind him. Of course, I had more horsepower, so I didn't want to overpower them. So on the straightaways, I just hung back, but I was watching what was going on in the corners. So what I noticed was the lead car, in every brake zone, the lead car's driver, brake lights were going on sooner relative to a particular track marker, like a curb or something there, or a brake marker, sooner than the other cars following that person, who I didn't know at the time. And they were coming off sooner relative to track position. And yet, every corner they were gapping the group who was trying to do lead and follow by a notable amount, every corner. And I was thinking, that doesn't make any sense. I wonder if that guy has a supercharger. Because, you know, we hear on TV, we see in the publications, late braking, blah, 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 blah. Well, anyway, so that kind of was contrary to what I heard and the accepted wisdom. So after they went in, I went in too, and I went over to found the person who was leading the parade. I found out later, much later, later at the end of the day, that it was a gentleman, and he happened to have the Spec Miata track record at that track at the time. I didn't know that at the time, but I just went over and introduced myself and said, hey, I'm just, I'm learning to drive. I love the sport. I was following you, in that silver BMW, and I noticed, and I just articulated to him what I just said. And he goes, yeah, okay. And I said, well, I've heard that blah, 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 but why weren't you braking late, and how were you pulling away? Do you have like a special motor? He said, no. He said, if I am in a race, which we're not doing in a DE, right? If I'm in a race and I'm trying to get ahead of a competitor who's ahead of me, and I can get on the inside of them entering the corner, I want to brake as late as possible to make sure I stay on the inside of them and deny them access to the apex. And we've seen that in Formula One and other sports in road course racing. That's my way of getting ahead of them and maintaining position. But if I am out there doing qualifying, i.e. I'm trying to do my fastest lap, I'm going to brake way earlier and much more gently than that, and that'll allow me to keep, and he gave me this, he didn't have the prop, but he was telling me about this and weight transfer. I'd never heard that before. I'd heard it, but I didn't equate it. You know, we talked about it in 10,000-pound armored limos because they suck at everything. And but it just didn't click until that moment. He said, but what I want to do is I want to keep the car as flat as possible. I said, what do you mean, flat to the floor? He said, no, keep the platform as level as possible on all fours. Those are his terms. I didn't make this up. And he said, if I do that, I don't have to brake as much, and I can get back to the gas sooner. And with a low-powered car, that's all I have. I don't have a turbo or 600 horsepower. And it was one of those formative moments where the light goes on and go, wow, that's something, that's some heavy-duty stuff. And let me tell you, it was wisdom. It was wisdom. And so that's kind of where the thoughts about lowering the drama, being a little gentler on the brake pedal, stabilizing the car, carrying more speed through the corner with less instability and less of an opportunity, particularly when we're not in a competitive environment, to kind of have that mistake happen. The mistakes are going to happen, but that's not going to help us learn as well. Anyway, I didn't mean to get off on a rant here, but it was a very relevant point to whoever asked that question. Who did ask that question? You did, okay, sorry. Did that answer your question? It did. So I would do it in small increments, work on the braking intensity first before you work on trying to be the latest braker in the world, because it's not going to do you any good. It's not going to do you any good. It's not going to make you any faster. It's harder to learn from that, and it puts you in harm's way a lot more, especially if you're kind of moving up the rung of skill level. Yes?
When you're coaching, let's say, advanced run group drivers, is there a common mistake or flaw you see them doing as it pertains to braking?
I would say, yes, I would say the most common is braking too hard and too late when it's not necessary.
Okay.
And thus having to, at best, overslow the car for the corner, and at worst, missing the apex and then having the car all sort of out of sorts when you get to track out. In other words, it kills the whole segment.
Okay.
That's a great question. That's kind of why I indicated that it was sort of the holy grail, the low-hanging fruit, because at all levels, there are very few people who are really, really, truly on the money with the brake pedal every time.
So earlier, just not as hard.
And I'm not talking about 300 yards earlier.
Right.
But it's just it's all about keeping the platform as level as possible on all four of these, and that we can feel that in the car. You can feel that, and your helmet's going to snap forward, or it's more like that. And so we can self-coach pretty easily. But yeah, generally, it's getting too deep in the corner before you go to the brakes, and then as a result, those are the most common ones. And that's why I think it's really good to be in a car with people as much as possible, because while data and video are great, being able to look over and kind of feel where the car is and see where the car is pointed and look what the driver's doing with their hands and feet and their body language, and then be able to have that feedback instantaneously, I think is invaluable. You can't repeat that doing a data analysis. It's a close second, but those are the two most common ones. Pardon me, sir. Okay, other questions? As I mentioned earlier to the gentleman in the back, no matter what your level, keeping detailed notes is only going to do you good. And what I mean by that is, it doesn't have to be a lot of complicated stuff. It can be, came to Lime Rock, was raining, 48 degrees, set tires at XYZ, car felt, blah, blah, blah. Next day, sunny, 63 degrees, set tires at blah, 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 car was very difficult to control, lowered tires by 5 pounds. I don't know. But keeping detailed notes on each track and what you're doing as you get more sophisticated and start doing things to your car and making adjustments and safety changes and getting quicker, it's going to be a lot easier to go from track to track. And we're going to talk about coming to new tracks in a minute. But keep detailed notes. It'll really help. It'll really help. The other thing to think about when we keep detailed notes is how are you measuring yourself? You know, turn 11, my quickest exit speed was 58 miles per hour. I made the apex later. If you can think about why you did that. That may not be possible for beginners, but it will come very quickly. For the more advanced drivers, start to learn setup. What I mean by setup are things like tire pressures, as well as some of the other adjustments if you invest in more sophisticated suspension, sway bars, all the alignment, stuff like that. Keep detailed notes of that stuff. I still have several notebooks from when I was actively tracking that, I went to Road Atlanta. This is this and this and this, and I find a setup including cold tire pressures that really work. But it's a good habit to learn early. And make experiments. To the gentleman's point in the back about tire pressures, try things. Try them in little increments, as I said. Make notes of what happens. Somebody makes a suggestion and your alarm bells don't go off and go, ooh, danger, danger, danger. Give it a try, and then if it's really sucky, don't even write it down. But if there's some benefit from it, write it down. Because you might be able to help someone else one day. Someone comes to you and say, wow, I don't know where to set my rear tires on my, whatever, XYZ Carrera. And you go back and, well, I tried this and it worked, and then they could get to go, well, should I listen to this clown or not? But it's passing it forward, right? So start to learn how changes in the car affect your perception of it. The first thing would be with tire pressures. Now, again, this is something that will become easier as you get more experience. So the folks who have less experience, this is probably going to sound like a foreign language, but I'm going to explain what I mean by this. The car is telling us every corner of every lap certain things. And things change every corner of every lap on the track, no matter what level you're at. You burn off fuel, so there's less weight wherever your fuel tank is. Tires get warmer. Sun comes out, sun goes away, rain starts, temperature rises, temperature drops. The sun, the shadow on the track. You get tired. Fill in the blanks. All sorts of crap goes on every corner of every lap. It is very difficult for a newer driver to even process 10% of it. But if you start thinking about paying attention to the little messages the car is giving you, such as every time I turn into this corner, late in the afternoon, the front tires slide. But in the morning, they don't. Okay, well, why is that? Could it be my driving? I'm more confident in the afternoon. Could it be it's a lot hotter and the track gets greasy, which means with a lot of sunshine, some tracks lose grip with a lot of sun in the afternoons. Not all of them do. Could be my tire pressures are all wrong. I forgot to take air out as the temperature went from 48 in the morning to 70 in the afternoon. But pay attention to that stuff. Because what it's going to, again, to a point I made earlier today, this afternoon, was it's going to take your brain away from the overwhelming, where do I brake, where do I turn in, where do I track out, and focusing on the mechanics and focusing more on the driving. And it's going to allow you to flow things and be more smooth and not have to think about execution and trying so hard a lot easier. When we try hard and we're trying to go fast is when we make mistakes, and we typically aren't fast at all levels. The pros who go out there, I'm going to go set a record-setting lap. Never happens. But I'm going to try to preserve 1 more mile per hour in turn 1, and they figure out how they're going to do it. And if they can execute on it, they might set a record lap. So we don't try to nail it all at once, but we're thinking about what the car is doing. And if we have to adjust our driving for it, so be it. Does that make sense? And this is at all levels, because you're going to notice changes in your car throughout the day, even your first day. Your instructor's going to notice it. Hopefully he or she will point them out to you. Do you feel X, Y, Z? Are the tires the same as they were this morning? Well, what you're feeling might be, this might be the reason. And as you start working in your own mind, and particularly this is for the solo and the advanced drivers, on self-coaching or driving alone, take small bites. I run into way too many people, they're so focused on comparing lap times with their friends. And they're all caught up in, oh, I did a 2:17 and next session I want to do a 2:15. Holy mackerel, no. It's like boiling the ocean. Work on little things. Work on executing better in little pieces. And then when you can measure that you've executed better, work on the next piece. Whether it's a corner or a segment. A segment is a clump of corners that you group together. So for example, at Lightning, let's say it's turn 2 through 5, might be a segment. Maybe that's not the segment you use, but that's a segment for me. Or 10 through 1 might be another segment. Pick one thing and try to be a little smoother, a little quicker in and out of there. And if you can execute however you're measuring yourself, then work on the next one. And what you'll find is that will allow your lap times, or however you're measuring yourself with your buddies, to come to you. Because if we try to nail it all, we're not going to nail any of it. It never works. Common sense? Not very common these days. All right. Track walks. If you have the opportunity to participate in a track walk conducted by someone who hopefully knows what they're talking about, regardless of the track, please take advantage of it. There is so much that we don't see in the driver's seat going 100 miles an hour on a track. Little nuances of changes of elevation, camber, grip, all sorts of stuff that can directly affect, and if the person knows what they're talking about, they're going to say why this is, I'm pointing this out to you, X, Y, Z, this is why it's important. If you place your tire here, it's going to be much grippier than over 2 feet this way, and they'll tell you why. It can have a huge impact on how you drive that track. I have conducted a lot of track walks, a lot of tracks around the US and Canada, and it opens people's eyes up. It's amazing the crap you can pick up walking around. So if you have an opportunity to do that, participate in one, doesn't matter where it is, please take advantage of it. You will learn so much. Even if you only retain 10% of what you see, take a notebook. Watkins Glen, turn 1, lots of camber, get down to apex. I mean, you're going to pick up something from that if the person who's conducting it, which is, they usually have some skill, or else they wouldn't be conducting the track walk. But that's going to help you do 3 things. Drive that track better, self-coach, and when you get to new tracks, it's going to help you pick them up quicker. And we'll talk about coming to new tracks in a second. This next topic, vision and reading a track, what I mean by that is very, very similar to the previous topic. Sometimes we can't do a track walk, sometimes we can only do a YouTube. If we are looking in the wrong place on the track and we're not looking at things that are important to us, and I'll give you some examples of those, we're probably going to have a hard time coming up to pace. And in an ideal world, for a solo or advanced driver going to a new track, hopefully they'd be on pace with their run group by the end of the first day. Hopefully. Barring any really extreme weather or weird stuff. Not always easy to do. Some of it can be learned from riding with people, riding with local instructors, following people who clearly know their way around. Some of it is reading the track, and that can come from simulator, to this gentleman's point over here. It can come from YouTube. It can come from track walks, all sorts of things. But for example, what do I mean by reading the track? Well, have a lot of people here been to Lime Rock? Please hands, show me how many's been to Lime Rock. Okay, fair enough. There's a turn at Lime Rock called the Uphill. There's a reason it's called the Uphill, because it's uphill. And the lead into it, for many cars, there's a light braking zone right before and into where the hill goes up. And so, okay, it's fast entry. We have to tap the brakes for safety. But what we don't have to do is hit the brakes very hard, because why? We're going into an uphill. The car will compress on its suspension, which aids grip, and we're going uphill, which does not aid velocity, gravity slows us down. So reading things like that, elevation changes, particularly in brake zones, whether they're uphill or downhill, we talked about turn 1 at the Glen a minute ago, factor those in. What do I have to do? If it's an uphill brake zone, I really don't need to brake much because the hill's going to catch me. If it's a downhill brake zone, maybe I don't want to brake as intensely because I want to keep the car a little flatter. Things like that. That's going to help you read the track. Which corners lead to long straightaways? Which are the big sweepy corners, the big arcs where we need to carry a lot of speed? Looking at those and figuring out the best way through them is a great way to read the track. And then finding out from instructors, where should I be looking? You know, on the street, we look at the hood, we look at the taillights of the car in front of us. On the track, we need to look where we want the car to go, not where we're going. If I want the car to go over there, I need to turn my head and look where I want it to end up at the end of the corner. It's sort of a leap of faith because our instinct is, I want to look at the apex where I'm going to turn in. Because it's like on the street, I don't want to hit the curb. But we have to get past that and turn our head and our nose, not just our eyes. That way, and guess what? The arms will follow. Why does it work that way? I don't know. But when the minute you turn your head, the hands follow. So work on where you're looking. And then so these two concepts, flow, linking corners, and thinking backwards, are kind of the same. What I mean by that is, the second topic here should have been first, gentle hands and feet. We talked about that earlier, being a little less dramatic with what we do with the gas pedal, the brake pedal, the steering wheel to keep the car more level. You will get into a flow where your hands almost never stop moving in and out of a corner, where there's not a lot of drama in the feet. The car is nice and serene and you're going a lot faster. Many tracks, almost every track, have series of corners that you can link together, meaning you think of them as a set. When we're first starting out, we think of them as individual corners. Again, lightning, 2, 3, 4, 5. For those of you who've been to lightning track. But in reality, they are a linked set where they are setting the car up to get in and out of turn 5, the one over the hump, better. And if we think backwards, okay, where do I want and we're going to talk about these two tracks in a minute. How do I want the car to exit turn 5 at lightning? Because the car gets light and I'm turning and there's all sorts of stuff going on. Okay, to do that, how do I need to enter turn 5? Okay, to do that, how do I need to get in and out of turn 4? Okay, to do that, what do I need to do in turn 2 and 3 to set up for the entry to turn 4 so that I can execute in turn 5? That's what I mean by linking corners. And as you get experience, you will start thinking backwards from the optimal outcome you want to achieve, thinking, how do I enter that complex of corners to achieve that? Again, this is not a skill you're going to do your first day at the track. And so, for those of you who haven't been out there yet, I'm sorry if I'm overwhelming. But this will make sense after a few track days, because you'll see how corners are linked together, how the outcome of one relates to the other. That will make you a much better driver. We talked about systems earlier, stability control, ABS, all the PS, AS, PDE, KM, whatever they are now. They're wonderful. They keep us from lots of things. And the fact of the matter is that with the exception of like the emergency braking stuff and the lane keep assist, all the other systems, for instance, the Porsche factory drivers, the streetcar drivers, the testers, they leave them on. Because the goal is to drive their cars fast without the systems intruding. And that's our goal on the track too. If you're coming into a brake zone and every time you're feeling that ABS dump the car, okay, I mean, it's okay, but it's not the best way into that brake zone. It's beating the crap out of the car, and your brake zone's going to be a lot longer. And your car's going to be like this. So maybe don't do that. Brake a little less intensely so we're not feeling the intrusion of ABS. We talked about the rear brake pads earlier. If you're noticing, wow, after day one, I had brand new brake pads and the rears are almost worn down, the car is probably saving you every single corner of every lap. It might be good to think about, or take an instructor with you to think about why that's happening. Because that's not helping you. It's saving you, but it's not helping you improve your skills and keep that learning curve going. So the goal is to minimize the intrusion, and as instructors, we're looking for that. Your instructor, you know, if something major has just been avoided because the car did some magic and the driver did this or the car did this, they're probably going to tell you that you just were saved from a pretty major calamity. That's not meant to scare you, but it's meant to educate and allow us to dial things back a little bit so we don't have that occur again. Some things are out of our control. Car spills oil in front of you, sudden downpour. I mean, some things we have to kind of take in stride, but driver-induced mistakes can be covered up by horsepower and these systems. The goal is not to use either of them as a crutch, because we're not learning anything. Questions on that?
Yeah, question. I noticed for one track, or maybe one or two tracks, if I go for a crest straight, I do sometimes notice a flicker of my PSN or whatever it is. Am I doing something wrong, or is that just unavoidable?
You mean when the car gets late?
Yeah, so there's like a ride that comes along.
Oh, I don't think you can do anything about that.
Okay.
You know, an example is the uphill at Lime Rock. The car gets really light at the top, for example. You know, the systems are going to think something's going on, but it's really not going to impact your driving. It's more in the corners, if you feel it doing all this weird stuff and keeping you straight to pay attention to. That's just my opinion. I mean, you guys might disagree. And ABS intrusion. So, but some things you can't avoid. Even on some of the cars now, a lot of them, when you turn everything off, it's still on. It's just the threshold of intrusion is much higher. It's really designed to save you from something really terrible, not just bad. So sometimes if you're going straight and the car gets late, you can't avoid that. I mean, just like, you know, before the systems were there, you'd hear a little bit of rear wheel spin when the car gets late. Now the systems intervene and prevent the wheels from spinning, but it's not really affecting you or the car, because then the car comes back down on its tires and you're good to go. Good question. Other questions? All right. I appreciate everyone's attention. We talked about data. I'm actually not going to go through that again. Learning a new track, we just talked about that. Track walks, we talked about that. Good. Okay.
Way ahead.
Yeah, I'm way ahead. Questions so far? So I was also asked, in addition to doing a Q&A at the end, I was asked to do a quick corner-by-corner walkthrough of both Lightning and Lime Rock. For the people how many people here have not been to Lightning? How many people here have not been to Lime Rock? Okay, fair enough. All right, so I will try to keep each of them pretty simple so that the folks who've not been there don't get overwhelmed. If you have questions or something doesn't make sense, pipe in as always. So, if I push this, there's our map of Lightning. Fun track, very short, not as short as Lime Rock, very short. Some parts are very technical. Just a couple of salient points that I think will help drivers at all levels. For those of you who've been there and those of you who haven't, as we come down the straightaway at the top, the main straightaway, at the end of it, as we approach turn 1, the track goes somewhat dramatically uphill. And the apex curbing on the right describes where the corner is. But in an ideal world, if we think backwards, like we talked about earlier, what I want to have to happen is after the car gets light, right about where the number 1 is on your map, I want the wheels to be pointed straight at turn 2. So I want to be finished all my steering, because if the car gets light and I have steering, when it comes back down, it can be unpredictable. I'm sure that makes some sense. So I want the car to do that. So how do I do that? Well, one of the things that we can do is make it a super late apex. There's a lot of striped curbing on the right side, and the very end, which is a point, is kind of where we want to place the car at the inside edge of the corner. And in doing that, the car will get light as we free up our steering, meaning we straighten the wheel. So as it gets to the left edge of the track out of turn 1, it's wheels straight when it comes back down on all fours. For those of you who haven't been there, when I say it gets light, you're not getting air. But the feeling in the car is it's kind of unloading the suspension. It's a fun corner. It's a very fast corner. It's much faster than it looks, and it leads to a very technical section of the track, which we briefly mentioned a few minutes ago. So we're driving straight out of 1 into 2 and 3. 2 and 3 in an ideal world can be driven as one arc. And what I mean by that is here they're listed as 2 corners on the track. But if we can connect them with more or less one hand motion and carry momentum through them, it's going to be maximum for stabilizing the car. So what you're going to do is you're going to start it on the outside, the left side of your track, driver's left, before turn 2. We're going to come into the inside of the apex of 2, and then let the car come back out to the outside, the left side of the track, driver's left, between 2 and 3, and then bring it back into 3. There are a couple different ways through 3. Into 4, the important thing is to have really smooth weight transfer, because all the way through that section we're turning left, which means we're putting the mass of the car on the right side tires. I'm sorry, we're turning right. What am I thinking? We're turning right. The mass of the car is on the left side tires, and then we're transitioning that to turn left into turn 4. We don't want to do that suddenly, because that surprise to the car is going to be a real surprise to you. So we want to flow our hands from turning right gradually through dead center in order to allow the car to settle on its right side a little bit more to get through turn 4 as we turn left. There's plenty of real estate there to do it. What we're trying to do is get the car out of that complex so it's on the far left side of the track right before we turn in for 5. We're trying to make the radius of 5 as wide as possible, so we don't use as much steering angle, because what's happening? We're still turning, the car is getting light, we want to do as little as possible, so the car is not as unstable as it might be. And so whatever we need to do to get the car to the far left of the edge of the track, right before we turn into number 5 there, that's going to work the best for us. Make sense so far? What we can't see here, for those of you who haven't been there, is we're going uphill into 5, and then so what we're trying to do is get the car pointed across the apex, very late across the apex, so that as the car is its lightest, we can come out of steering a tiny bit, so that when it comes down and grips again, going down that hill between 5 and 6, which is downhill, we don't have as much steering. Because once the car comes down and grips more, we have more contact patch. If we have a lot of steering, it can cause the car to be unstable, and it can cause it to go off track. So the later our apex in 5, the better we can open up, free up, unwind our steering a few extra degrees exiting 5. That's also going to improve our speed, because we can use more throttle through there, but it's going to give us a lot more peace of mind, because the car is not going to feel so discombobulated. And then when we turn in at 7, we're going to apex right in the middle of the corner. Because when we exit and we're back on the throttle again, it starts to go uphill, so the grip comes back. Remember, anytime we're going uphill, the car is compressed, contact patches are fat. And then we have a lot of throttle all the way to we set up for the entrance of turn 9, which a lot of people call the light bulb, the 9-10 complex, because it looks like sort of a light bulb. Now, there's a couple different ways through here. The key takeaway from this complex is look what it leads to. It leads to the longest straightaway in the back. So it's important to get to throttle as early as possible, use as much throttle position for as much real estate coming out of there as possible. Because of the amount of real estate there is, it has a huge impact on our speed coming into 1, our lap time, however we're measuring ourselves. There are a number of different ways. Through 9, that whole area is banked, for those of you who haven't been there before. The banking is to our benefit. It provides extra grip. And so I've seen people all over the place in that segment, and what often happens is if you don't go too far up the banking, you don't lose that much speed. The people who try to go way up and then come down and get a slingshot, they kill all their speed going up that little hill, and it doesn't do them any good. Staying around the middle and then getting on the gas and bringing it back through 10 allows you to use more throttle for more of that real estate. Some people will make a double apex in there, some people don't, but just don't let the car go up very high. There's lots of visuals in there, and how you place the car is your business. It's important to come in to the latter part between 9 and 10, come into the inside of the track, apex there, be on the gas, and drive out of there hard. Another thing to think about is, as we get to what's marked as turn 10, the track crests again on the right side. Aim for that, because if you don't, as you can see, the track kind of comes back on us, and it surprised a lot of people. If they don't get all the way to the right through 10, all of a sudden the grass is coming at them really fast on the left. You don't want to have that happen, because it's really embarrassing. Because you're going through the grass all the way down the main straightaway in front of everybody, and then you have to do the lap of shame to come in and get talked to. Who wants to do that? Then you're going to blame me. So again, the takeaway, think backwards. How do I get on the gas as early as possible coming out of there with as little steering as I can get away with? That's all predicated on how I enter turn 9 from turn 8. Try different things, listen to your instructor, single apex, double apex, lots of steering, little steering. You're going to find very quickly what works and what doesn't work. And you can measure it with a couple things. A, where on this map do I get on full throttle? B, what is my miles per hour as I'm coming on the inside of the apex of turn 10? And C, what is my mile per hour when I get on the brakes into turn 1? The second and third of those, really easy places to quickly look down and back up, as long as there's nobody right in front of you. And then you're going to remember where you're full throttle, because you just, okay, it was here, no, it was back there. But any or all of those three are ways of measuring our progress as to whether we're executing best practices in this segment. Questions on lighting? Cool.
Dave,
Yes, sir. Okay.
I have a question. Going into 2, when you want to make 2 to 3 one big arc, are you all the way in on 2 the apex, or are you out about a car width or so?
I have found that depends on the car. A lot of street cars where you don't have a lot of front grip and the tires aren't as sticky, I'll go all the way in because the car is going to drift out anyway. Cars with really sticky tires, I'll be maybe a car width off the right side. So that's going to depend. So one of the most embarrassing things a coach can do is to spin a client's car. Which is obviously the segue to telling you I did it. And this track, many years ago, I was working with a gentleman who was an experienced Porsche club racer who had a GT3 Cup car, and he hired me to coach him for 2 days. And so the beginning of the second day, he wanted me to take his car out, the first session of whatever event we were at, to put down, he had data in the car and some video to kind of get a good lap time. But it was really cold that morning, and he was on full slick tires. For those of you who don't know, full racing tires don't work well when it's cold. So I went out and I figured I'd do 2 easy warm-up laps because there was just no grip. I mean, it was probably 42 degrees. So I come out of the pits, and you can see where the exit to the pits is right after turn 1, and I'm hugging the right side of the track because there are other cars on track. I'm being really polite, letting cars at speed go by as I'm going out at 25 or 30 miles an hour, letting traffic go by. So I go through 2, hug the inside of 2, I'm on the brakes a little bit to get some heat in the car, go through 4, everything's fine, staying on the right side of the track, out of their way, because I know I was going to need a few laps to warm up. Come in 5, again I'm on the right side, which is not normally the side you'd be on for optimal stability. I'm going 28 miles per hour according to the data. And somebody who was coming behind, I see this car coming in the rearview mirror, and it was heading right for the car. I mean, the person just, I don't know what the problem was, but they certainly could have gone around, but they didn't. And so I'm thinking, okay, I'm either going to get rear-ended or I can get out of here really quickly. And so I made a change to my steering angle at 28 miles per hour, and the car just did this slow 270-degree spin and came to a stop right between 5 and 6 on your map. And the other car went by, and I was mortified. And so I thought I had flat spot of the tires, so the car didn't stall. I kept it going, drove around, did the lap of shame, came in, found my client, Dan. I said, oh my God, Dan, this is so. He said, what's wrong? I said, we got to check the tires, blah, blah, blah. They were fine. He said, what happened? I said, guy almost rear-ended me, I had to evade, and I spun the car. I was mortified. I was thinking, okay, he's going to be sending me home. He thought that was the funniest thing ever. And he said, oh, quick, get out of the car. Let's look at the video. Oh my God. He himself laughing. And so, anyway, we were able to get out and get the data lapse and got the car warmed up. But there's a lot going on in that section, even at 28 miles an hour. Is my point that you can't surprise the car, or you're going to have a really embarrassing moment. So the reason I mentioned that, Tom, was that in that car, at temperature, at speed, I would be a little off the apex of 2 because it's really grippy. The slick tires have a lot of grip. But in a pure street car where you're going to get some slide, which is a safety mechanism in street tires, I would try to get it in because it's going to drift out anyway. That's kind of a long-winded answer to your question. Other questions on this particular track on Lightning? For those of you who haven't been there, it is a hoot. I highly recommend it. I highly recommend it. And very safe. I mean, I didn't go off track, but I mean, out there it's grass. So, okay, Lime Rock Park. Okay, Lime Rock Park, much shorter than Lightning. What is it, 1.5 miles, I believe? 1.53 miles, thank you. So, lots of elevation change here. Beautiful scenery. Medium amount of safety. So let's talk about ways around there that keep us out of trouble and give us lots of fun. You know, we only have one really long straightaway, purely straightaway. We have 2 smaller ones and a long one. It's obviously the one at the bottom of your screen. Goes by pit lane, start finish, all that jazz. And it leads into turn 1 and 2, which collectively is called Big Bend. As you can see, it's more than a 180-degree turn in not a lot of real estate. And so we can look at that turn in a couple ways, but regardless of how we look at it, we're still going to have to brake because we come down, if we carry speed all the way onto the main straightaway, we're going to be moving along at a pretty solid clip. This is a place where that smooth braking, thinking about keeping that platform as flat as possible under the brakes, pays big dividends. Why? Because look what goes on in Big Bend. Now, in an ideal world, may I borrow your lightsaber there, Darth? I'm going to use the left side map. I can't do it on both. In an ideal world, our brake zone would include, so one of the better ways through here is to make it a double apex, where we clip the inside, the apex there, and then a second time out here. In order to make that work, if I can only keep this still, we end up braking on the brake pedal into that first apex. So we're driving down the main straightaway on the left side of the track, and we gradually bring it smoothly across the track so we're on the inside on the driver's right as we're on the brakes. Probably going down at least a year, depending on your car. And then after we touch that apex, the car is just going to sort of wash out into roughly the middle of the track, more or less. We want that to happen because as we pick up the throttle again, that will tuck the nose and bring the car back in to the second of the 2 apexes in turn 2. What that approach allows us to do is a couple things. It allows us to move our brake zone for turn 1 deeper into the corner, which gives us more acceleration zone here. It has a big impact on our speed, our lap time, however you measure yourself. It allows us to brake mostly in a straight line in the direction we want to turn. So by doing that, instead of having the car like this and having to turn right, the car is like this. So we've already kind of pre-trajectoried it 10 or 15 degrees before we turn it more. That makes it a lot easier. It means less weight transfer onto the left tires. Everything we talked about earlier. And then as we pick up the throttle, meaning we get back to some throttle, not necessarily 100%, but something between 0 and 100, and we're still turning, we want the car to, again, go from middle of the track or wherever to be inside for that second apex. What that does is it makes that big bend almost one arc. Instead of 2 corners, even though there are numbered corners on here, we treat it as best we can as one corner. And that way we almost can drive Miss Daisy. We turn our car in and the steering, when we get to throttle, almost stays the same. We just kind of, the car almost does a gentle, if we're in a helicopter above, it does a really gentle drift around there. Inside, outside, back to the inside. That's the easiest on the car. It requires the least amount of braking relatively and allows us to carry the most relative miles per hour in the middle here and coming out. Make sense so far? Now everybody's ready to go take a nap. Now here, just based on physics, the car is going to want to go from the inside, it's going to go to track out on the outside there. And this area is called the S's. We have the left-hander, the right-hander, but the key is this is a setup, this is a linked corner complex. We talked about that earlier. And if we execute well in here, in theory, we should have a lot more speed coming up to the uphill before we get on the brakes. And there are a couple, this is actually a very difficult corner to get right, as somebody mentioned in the morning session. It's one of those corners that you never think you got right. No matter how you drive it, it always seems like we could have gone faster there. It's diabolically perplexing, which is what makes it fun. And there are two common ways through there. I don't think either's wrong or right. When I've driven cars here with data, I end up with the same lap time, but there are different pluses and minuses with each one. So I'm going to go through it really quickly. Scenario one is right here. Can you guys see this? Mm-hmm. Okay. So right here, we're on the far left side of the track. We more or less stay there, maybe move over a couple feet or two, and this is an acceleration zone here, and then we brake straight into the entrance of into the left-hander, turn 3. So we're mostly on the left side of the track. We brake, we kind of end up mid-track, and then we kind of have to really crank the car in and slow it down a fair amount to get to the late apex of 3, which is right about here. Course number 1. Pluses of that, straight braking in here, and in theory we can use a little more gas because we can brake a little later in here. We have a little more of an acceleration zone in theory. Doesn't always work, but in theory we do. Downsides of that, we have to brake harder here because we're using more steering angle to get the car into that really late apex on the far left, your left-hand side here. Pluses and minuses. Scenario 2. We're on the far left side of the track here. We kind of go maybe half to 2/3 of the way across the track. We're still going this direction. And we brake into the corner, which means we're braking less intensely because we don't have to slow the car as much while we begin our turn in. And we hold the car about right side of the middle of the track for a lot longer and then bring it into that same left side late apex. Advantages of that, not nearly as intensive braking. Number 1, the trail braking, the braking and turning helps the car to point this way, which helps us to get around that apex. Downside of it, a lot easier, a lot harder to judge your brake point because you're doing all sorts of stuff coming off the side of the track, trying to judge where the apex is, and you're kind of braking while you're turning. Follow your instructor. Try them all if you can. Try to measure yourself. One way to measure yourself is when you're on the brakes down here before the uphill, what's your miles per hour at the brake point? Look down and look back up. I don't know. I've done data on the same day, same car, lap after lap, trying in different ways, and the lap times are exactly the same to the 10th. You may have different results. So those are the two most common ways in and out of there. But, oh my God, it's just like, I could have done that better. Oh, I should have done this. It's always second-guessing yourself here. The key is getting on the gas out of here and then carrying that all the way through. Right here in the right-hander, on the inside, which is where the apex is on driver's right, there's a ton of beneficial grip. Get the car all the way into the apex. There's a ton of grip there. You don't see it. You feel it if you do a track walk. Back to the track walk conversation. So we're on the gas. They call this the straightaway. It's really not straight. As you can see, down here, towards the end, there are two visuals that help us. One of them, they're both on the left side of the track. One of them is a curving on